All right, good evening, everyone. It being about 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 25th, we're going to call to order the Board of Selectmen's meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if we could have Jack lead us in the pledge.
Get right to work, Jack.
Right to work.
Please help me.
Sure.
Oh,
I pledge
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, great. And we'll start with citizens input. I know we have Kathy Vandenboom here for citizens input. Anyone else? Just you? Okay. So I know you've heard this before, but about 5 minutes. And it being citizens input, we won't get into a dialogue this evening, but if there's something we want to take up, we can put it on a future agenda. And Seth's just walking in if you want to give him a minute. You can either come to, well, actually, that's, yeah, why don't you sit down there? Sorry about that.
No problem.
If you could just tell everyone your name and your address before you get started as well.
Sure. Kathy Vandenboom, 109 Morse Street. So can I go ahead and start?
Yeah, just, you may want to move the microphone up just a tiny bit.
So I didn't even say what I was writing, but I'm writing about the 119 Morse Street project. So when this LIP project was brought to the town's attention, you were advised that the details, we call them the weeds, should be handled at the ZBA level. The board was told that by signing the application, the BOS is not approving the project, but rather is letting the state know that they agree that there's a need for this type of housing in Foxborough. But since then, we've learned much more about LIP projects. A recent 2022 CHAPA webinar outlines the best practices for a LIP project, and the developer should create a municipal impact analysis addressing the impact on services and schools, even a preliminary traffic report. They should partake in community outreach, reach out to the neighbors, and ask the BOS for a wish list. The developer should expect to be in front of the BOS for about 4 to 6 months addressing topics, and they say areas of public health and safety should be avoided. In Franklin, they have a 40B guideline that has the planning board review 5 aspects. It's stormwater, traffic, architecture, and parking before it even gets to the BOS. And then it stops at the Conservation Commission, and there's 4 factors there. So Gary Whitehouse from the planning board, he questioned this process. And he asked why the BOS could not negotiate some of this with the applicant. He expressed concern that they would have no knowledge as they made their decision. He ultimately abstained from voting, and I think it would have been helpful to have included his reason for abstaining in that report from the planning board. Profit and expediency have been the drivers of this project from the start, and unfortunately, the safety of these residents has never been a concern of the applicant. The applicant tried painfully hard to keep a 15-foot-old bridge as the only means of egress, reluctantly added sidewalks, pressured the Concom to settle on an arbitrary line in the river, and fought hard against soil testing. Mr. Elfman supported the project in part because Mr. Saig was a resident of Foxborough and a businessman and wants to build affordable housing for the town. But Mr. Saig hasn't attended a hearing since the BOS issued their endorsement over a year ago. The neglect of the property, coupled with his absence, shows a lack of investment in this property, and one would question if he'll sell it once permitted. How will we ensure that profits from the sale of a permitted property are given back to the town to an affordable housing trust? And who might he sell to? There are certainly some local applicants that you would want to stay clear from. The Inspector General has called 40B a pig fest for developers. The ZBA hasn't said anything about his absence, but it causes delays. So just this last Thursday, I asked the applicant, would he be willing to allow environmental partners to accompany the consultant in the boring of the wells? But I couldn't get an answer. The response was the same that we've heard several times. I will ask him. Honestly, sometimes it's like a public hearing with the Wizard of Oz. How can we be confident that we're providing safe, affordable housing? This is the question that was posed to you during the September 2021 meeting. And the response from this board is, we're not saying it's contaminated or not, we're just approving this to go to the state so that the ZBA can then determine that. But I think that statement's incorrect. Your endorsement of this project is what moved this project through the state process. If you hadn't endorsed the project, I don't think it would have been accepted by the state. Mass Housing has said, to be sure, there's a great need for new affordable housing, but there are situations where a new Chapter 40B development is not the best choice. Mr. Saig left the contamination section of the application blank. Questions 10 and 11. Question 11, has a 21E ever been done on the property? Please include a copy. It was blank and not included. Question 10, describe any known or suspected hazardous waste sites within a half-mile radius of the site. This is blank, but I can name 3. The Bleachery, Evelyn Porter site, Blaine Chemical. You might be able to count the dump, I don't know. So had he gone to Mass Housing or the DHCD, the incomplete application would have been addressed and these areas investigated. I spoke with the LIP administrator in February. I was asking her whether she saw a pond or a river on their walkthrough. She expressed concern about the affordable housing units across the street from Blaine Chemical. She was unaware of the potential contamination at the Bleachery despite attending the walkthrough. Contamination is important to the state. They wouldn't have it as a question on the application if it wasn't important. To think your endorsement was simply telling the state that Foxborough needs more diversified housing is simply not true. You are endorsing the project with the state and giving them reassurance the property was safe for residential development. At this time, I have no reason to doubt Mr. Saig's consultant, Mr. Parker. I met him, he seems really nice. But he strongly expressed that he does not think there will be contamination found. He will approach the project with this bias. If the testing process did not involve so much discretion, we would be more comfortable. But there seems to be a lot of site determination. What I mean by that is they're going to look at the site and determine where to put the wells, what kind of wells to go in, how deep the wells should go based on site assessment, like by site. Then there's the length of time that the well sits and the cost of the equipment on the site. He said he was unaware how many wells the subcontractor would be able to dig. It comes down in part to cost. Again, we know that applicants are profit-driven. Molly from Environmental Partners was clearly concerned about the process. Her hesitation and questions did not leave a sense of confidence in the current process. Let me also remind the board that Mr. Saig's track record is 0-2 on consultants. Power Environmental insisted that the river ended at a random point just after the bridge, despite the conservation agent's belief that it carried through the parallel banks. Power stated, we were getting caught up in the parallel banks, and that we were witnessing channelized energy from the impoundment. She refused to do any testing of the river beyond this established point, as it would take a lot more time and effort and money. Using a stick, a string, some oranges, and a pool raft, I did the testing on the river flow. As it turned out, the DEP was also hung up on the parallel banks, among other things, so much so that they called the whole passage a river. This consultant was unwilling to look beyond what she was incentivized to find, and as a result, missed that which she was tasked to find. The traffic report was equally concerning. Environmental Partners could not determine where the data came from. This is easily accessible empirical data, and it was wrong. It was missing crash data, among other discrepancies. He skewed the results to show more traffic travel to Cohasset Street, thereby missing the most concerning intersections at Dane and Spring, which we're still waiting on a follow-up. Finally, he said there was no further growth expected in this area, so traffic should remain consistent. Mansfield is creating an egress from their new MBTA community housing district directly to Morrison County. Traffic will most certainly be increasing. A simple Google search of Mansfield's plans would have shown this. But again, you can't find what you're not looking for.
And we are just about 10 minutes, so just aware for
Okay.
time.
So now we're in a predicament where we need to look for contamination, but finding it will make some look willfully negligent. This is where I hope you will step up to the plate and show your commitment to the future of Foxborough. Require the testing be overseen by environmental partners and done right. Don't just check the box. This is a reasonable request. There's a tremendous amount of money at stake here. If contamination is found, Mr. Saig is required to report it to the DEP and mitigate it. The incentive not to find contamination is overwhelming. You added a condition to the ZBA should explore the validity of the environmental concerns to determine if the site will yield a healthy, safe, and desirable environment in which future residents will live. You are responsible to follow through to make sure this happens. You had every right and responsibility to get into this weed at the BOS level and ensure this land was safe for development. You chose not to. At minimal, you could have conditioned mitigation to be added to protect kids from exploring the contaminated sites. Rather than providing families in need with safe, affordable housing, we're using them to be stewards of not one, but two unmitigated contaminated sites. These affordable housing applicants are signing up for safe, affordable housing, not to provide a service for the town at their own risk. The irony in all of this is that if the kids have dirt, the kids might be dirt bike owners themselves and make this entire situation worse. In summary, Environmental Partners has determined that this area is concerning enough to require testing. They are independent professionals. They have no incentive to find or not find contamination. They are the only entity truly working for the public safety of these future residents. If Environmental Partners had determined that there was no credible risk and advised no further action required, and I came here tonight to ask you to require testing, you'd quickly dismiss me telling me that Environmental Partners are the professionals and we defer to their expertise. Your answer should be no different in the reverse. Environmental Partners request testing, and they have expressed reservations regarding the process outlined in SEG's consultants' plans. Your most important responsibility right now is to the residents of Foxboro and ensuring beyond reproach that this area is safe for development. I can't think of one reason you would not require Environmental Partners to monitor the sampling as it occurs. The Concom requires an independent field peer reviewer. They do not allow the consultant to choose the developer to choose a consultant. Standing by a decision that was made with very limited information and not considering new information serves neither the current nor future residents of Foxboro. Continuing to make decisions with blinders on is even of greater concern. Please don't use the excuse that this is no longer in your control and it belongs to the ZBA. You are the reason this is at the ZBA, and you appoint each of its members. We elect you to serve our best interests. You have a responsibility to stay involved in the oversight. This is a decision each of you needs to make yourself. I urge you to review the data and write a letter to the applicant, letting him know your continued support is contingent on his allowing Environmental Partners to monitor the sampling as it occurs. Why wouldn't you?
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry I took so long.
No, that's okay. And you know, we had emailed briefly about like super high level, like 1 or 2 sentences. So obviously there's a lot of new information in that letter, and I think we'd all like to see it. I know you know how to get a
Yeah.
hold of Christine. Did you? I don't think.
Yeah,
we,
I have links and everything within my other letter
Okay.
to the studies that I'm.
Can you send it in Word, and those links should work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you mind just sending that over to Christina, and
Yeah.
she can get it to the board?
Absolutely.
And then we will follow up, you know, as appropriate from there.
Absolutely. Thank you
Okay.
for your time.
All
Sorry I
right, thank
took
you
so
very
long.
much. All right, anyone else here this evening for citizens input before we move to our first agenda item of the evening? No? Okay, thank you.
Actually, can I just make one quick comment? And I know there's going to be
Oh.
no, if you want to listen, that's okay. We can't have any dialogue. Well, firstly, openly, I'm speaking for myself, not for the whole board. I was the only person who wasn't in favor of this project from the beginning. And for some of the reasons that have been brought up tonight, and lots of other reasons that I had. And I do want to say I've been following it, and the Vanderbooms have put a lot of time, effort, and their own money into some of what they've brought forward to us. And while I know a lot of what she had said and asked doesn't, you know, we don't make a lot of those decisions. There are other boards and committees in town. But I've been a little bit disappointed on how I've followed it. I just want to say that I hope that whatever information that the Vanderbooms or anybody else might be able to bring forward is seriously considered. And we just want to get it right. That's how I look at it. Whether I was for the project or not, this board voted, and I have no problem with that. But we need to get it right. We don't want to hear 10 or 20 years from now that there's issues with contamination or people are getting sick. So I think the goal here is to address the affordable housing, work with Mr. Saig, but make sure we get it right. So for the people who are making and have more knowledge about how those tests are done, I just hope everybody involved, that's the goal. Let's just get it right. So
I think everyone's goal is always to get everything right. You know, but hearing a lot of this information, you know, for the first time, I think that we've got to take that back and we've got to look into it and see what the right next step is. So, okay, thank you. All right, great. So we have tapped beer truck for Normandy. Is that you, Eric?
How's everyone
I'm
doing
getting
tonight?
seasick.
Thank you so much for
Can you just turn it up just a little bit? Sorry, we're just making sure your audio is okay in the room. All right, do you mind just
No
saying your
worries.
name? We'll let you know if we can hear you okay?
For sure. My name is Eric Auerbach, here on behalf of Tout Beer Truck.
All right, great. We can hear you okay, so if you can hear us okay and you can see us, you can go ahead and tell us a little bit about your one-day application for Normandy Farms.
For sure. Thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it very much. So we will be, our group runs their Camper's Kitchen normally through the season, but they will be tomorrow evening and afternoon having a special event celebrating the finishing of the new pavilion they've built. So we'll be having Camper's Kitchen will be open, we'll be selling food, and then we're also bringing in our tapped beer truck for about 40 to 50 people. It's already prepaid, so we'll be pouring beer and wine for them just while people are getting food and kind of hanging out from 4 to 7. We will, our bartenders are tip certified, and we will, be checking IDs as well.
All right, great. And then we always ask if the alcohol is coming in and out the same day, but with a beer truck, I would
Yes.
have to assume
Yep.
that that's the case, but just,
Absolutely.
covering the base. So is this for campers, or
course,
is
yeah.
this like a ceremonial thing for Normandy itself?
Yeah, it's more of like a ceremonial
Okay.
thing for Normandy. So it's like for like the team.
Okay. All right, great. And I was actually in September and saw the pavilion in front of the Camper's Kitchen. It's absolutely beautiful. Much better than the tent
really
that was
is.
there.
Yes, very much. So we're really excited to have that. We were hoping to have it finished for this season, but we're really excited to have that going forward, next year. So it's pretty awesome.
All right, great. Any questions from the board?
No.
All right, being done, we're just going to take a motion, and then you'll be all set.
Very good. Motion to approve a one-day beer and wine license for Tap Beer Truck for a Normandy Farms event on October 26th, 4 to 7 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time again. Have a great night.
Thank you. And then next, we have Jillian O'Brien from the Joe Andruzzi Foundation. Do we have?
Just give her one moment.
All right. Hello. All right, can you just speak, make sure we can hear you okay now, Jillian?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can, and, I think you just heard Eric go through his spiel, so you kind of know what to expect. Yours is a little bit different, though, just, make sure people understand why Gillette Stadium would need a one-day, so if you can just go into that a little bit for the board?
Sure. So we are hosting our 15th annual gala at Gillette Stadium. And it actually wasn't Gillette that was requiring this. It was one of our liquor vendors that was requiring this initially. So everything is being served. Well, everything's being delivered to Gillette, being served by their staff who are all certified, tip certified, everything. We really have no hands on it. None of our volunteers will be serving it. It's all Gillette. So it really is just getting it to them and them handling it there on forward. So it's going to be consumed that night, and then it's going to be taken off premise as well.
And
Once
I
done.
think from what I understand, because Gillette normally wouldn't need this, it's because the wine is being donated. Is that correct? That's the reason it's being donated and brought in?
Correct. Yes, the wine distributor is requiring this.
Okay. Okay, that follows everyone
the
else's
difference.
understanding, okay. All right, I don't have any further questions. Does the board have any further questions for this event on 11/3?
It's a great event, by the way.
Yes.
It's a great event.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, I think we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve a charity wine license for the Joe Andruzzi Foundation event, Gillette Stadium, on November 3rd, 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you. Good luck with your event as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shelley.
All right, and if we can get the audit committee up here, and George, I imagine you're going to join them. Might be some familiar faces here. All right, if you can just remind everyone your name before you, and we do have your report here as well, in board docs for us as well.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Wei. I'm the audit chair for the audit committee. Good evening. My name is Bernard Dumont, and I reside at 5 Smith Lane, and I represent the school committee for the audit committee.
Paul Ivanovskis, member of the Audit Committee.
George Sammy, the finance director.
And I just noticed those are skulls on your, how festive, I like it.
More on this today. This is one I didn't even buy. I mean, I think somebody gave it to me for Christmas or something, you know?
Really, I would think about that one again, again.
And I'm the Board of Selectmen designee to the
Great.
audit.
That's right, Dennis, we forgot
Yes,
about
thank
you.
you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Dennis.
Could go against you.
I know.
Sorry, gentlemen, thank
Okay,
you.
I'm here tonight with members of the audit committee to report on the fiscal year 21 audit results as required by the town bylaws. The audit committee met with the town auditor on October 11 to review and discuss the audit reports in detail. I've provided a written report to the select board and will not go in detail about the report. But I will say that the audit is a clean report. It's an unmodified, to use the terminology, but it is a limited scope audit. Going forward, the bylaws require the audit committee to submit a report to the town in the annual report, so the audit committee will be submitting one next spring. Also, under the bylaws, the audit committee is required to recommend to the select board the selection of the auditor and the scope of the audit. So we will be doing it sometime prior to the start of the fiscal year 23 audit. Technically, it's too late for the audit committee to make the recommendation for fiscal year 22, and I believe the audit started about a month ago. About a month ago. So, do you have any questions on the audit report? They have a few minor recommendations, and I'll have George explain to the.
Okay, and you're speaking now of
The
that,
minor,
the one about the insurance, or the
Ransom.
the ransom.
And contingency planning.
Okay, one thing that has come up, and incidentally, it's not only with the audit, but also with Standard & Poor's and Hilltop, is as of late, there's been a lot of concern, not just here in Foxborough, all the way across the country in regard to ransom people breaking into your computer, stealing the information, and then holding you up, for money. Otherwise, they're not going to lay it. There's been 2 or 3 instances where we've gone over this. So let me just say this: we had Aaron Heyer come in, and let's start with. Aaron has a number of firewalls and what have you, from a IT standpoint, covering the town of Foxborough. But in addition to that, we carry an insurance policy for just, I think it's $1 million if somebody was holding us up for $1 million, if for some reason all those things broke down and that we had a data breach. So we're covered both by an insurance policy, and I think we have a fairly good IT department, which is certainly far beyond my scope as far as how these computers work. And I think that they've done well in keeping us insulated from this type of thing.
I can probably add to that a little bit. The Foxborough has actually been identified as being one of the more robust communities that has taken some very progressive steps towards dealing with this particular issue. And on top of the fact that it is $1 million coverage, it used to be $10 million at one time. But what's happened is that the insurance market has gotten very, very difficult to acquire coverage with, because there have been several instances where this has been the case. Maya has been looking at ways to address this. In fact, it even became an issue. I actually had the unique pleasure of meeting with the White House's director of cybersecurity a few months ago about this very issue, because this is a national problem. It's not just a situation that's unique to Foxborough. So there is a lot of discussion on the national level about this, as well as the local level and state level, to try and provide adequate coverage. The number one thing you can do, of course, is to provide robust protections through your cybersecurity measures. And Foxboro, fortunately, and thanks to Aaron High and his team, they provide very, very robust coverage here in Foxboro, so much so that, somebody at one point did try to break in and couldn't get in. So we knew that was happening, and we were able to report it and get on top of it right away, and we're able to offset that. But obviously, cyber is getting a lot more sophisticated. The criminals are getting more sophisticated, and as such, we have to continue to move with the stay ahead of the curve in terms of protecting the community in that regard and our information.
It's also interesting to note that most of us in the room have been recycled a number of times, as far as most everybody in here has already been on the finance committee or in another capacity, and also has participated in the capital improvement. And each and every year, I'm not saying every year it's the exact thing for security, but Aaron will come in with a list of things to keep the system as well as they can updated. And I think the town side of it has usually supported keeping that system up and robust.
Okay, there's one more item I want to talk about briefly. I know we're starting the budget process in the next couple months, and if I'm not mistaken, it's been about the same amount for many years for the audit engagement fees.
Yeah, in or
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
I mean, give or take a few, yeah.
So in my memo, you notice it's a limited scope audit. So we haven't met yet, but I have a feeling next year when the audit committee meets, we will most likely recommend we do more than a limited scope. It's a best practice to do every few years. I'm not saying we have major problems, but it's a good thing to do every 5 years or so. And I believe we haven't done it for quite some time. And then so rather than the recommendation shows up in spring, we need more money, it's probably best, George, you discuss with the selectmen what good amount to put in there.
Right, okay, and yeah, I mean, we can add a little bit.
Because
Just a thought on that particular item, and I don't disagree with your perspective on that one, Larry. I think none of us would disagree with it. Having more is better in some cases, and it doesn't have to happen every year, as you point out.
Yeah, it's every 5 years is fine.
But I do think that coming up in the next year will be a challenge, because you're going to see a lot of changes going on in the administration. You're going to have two changes in the front office, as well as in George's office and Bill Euchner's office. And so I think what I would recommend to you, because there's a lot for those people to take on in the first year, that would be a big issue for them to be dealing with the auditor and providing a lot of detailed information for that. I would recommend that you wait at least 1 year until they're in the office, and then do the more detailed audit at that point.
I hear what you're saying, Bill, but usually when you have a lot of changes, sometimes things do break down. So I know what you're saying, but there's another reason that maybe that's when you want to do the review. So.
George, would this typically kick off in September of next year? Not
You mean the audit itself?
the next audit, yeah.
Fiscal year
Yeah, they usually begin sometime in the fall, where they begin their initial coming in and testing, and Marie, the town accountant part, will begin shipping them info on, don't forget, we only just closed the books with everything that had to be done, so we have to wait until the books are closed, and then they begin to ship out info.
I guess I'd say that's a fair amount of time built in. So we haven't decided yet, but I think that's probably enough time. Also, from my own experience, Bill, having taken over a department, I've used internal audit to come in and actually look at it and give me some background on it, and so that could be useful to the new administration. That's just my experience in dealing with that. The new people will have a lot to learn in the first year, and having that on top. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying the timing of it, you should maybe wait 1 year until they're comfortable with the systems and knowing how systems work.
Well, I understand, but Marie is the accounting officer, so if that department is stable, there's really, you're right, that might be a new
Yeah, but
finance
she could be
director
moving
and-
up the ladder, and as a
She could,
result, that's the challenge.
Right, put on my audit committee hat, so I go over there. So I've been on a lot of audit committees, I've chaired audit committees, and this was a very clean audit. You ought to be proud that it was a very clean audit. But it was limited scope in a couple of areas that are fundamental to really having a smooth operating system without any underlying weaknesses that could be missed. And those are the areas of internal control and compliance. You know, so I would just weigh in that because it's been so long since it's been done, the sooner the better. And if, George, if you're available, because we're going to need your knowledge, you know, in terms of doing the audit, you know, that would be helpful as well.
I mean, I've already said to Marie and everyone, I have absolutely no problem. Look, Randy was very good with me when I came in, and I've never called him when he hadn't come back and given something. Marie's got my cell phone, and I don't have any problem with that. I might, the only thing I might say is that I might concur with Bill in that, again, I'm seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe by September of next year, I'll be lying on the Isle of Kona someplace or whatever, or something to that, or either that or I'll be driving Bill's golf cart and I'll drive the car. But the only issue is it's not going to have an effect on me.
Right.
But I do believe that to a certain extent, there has been a little bit of a strain over the past 3 years in that, remember, there was a massive turnover when we came in only 3 years ago and like struggling to catch back up and get everything going again. And unfortunately, the same type of thing is going, maybe, hopefully not as chaotically as that. And it's very easy for me to walk out and say, yeah, I'd do, you know, I'd go, you know, 100 times harder on it. I think probably, you know, you'd want to maybe consult with Marie and see how, you know, how much more of a burden that's going to be on in a transitory state. And that's my only recommendation, because I do believe, I mean, it sounds easy, but she's got to take over, and then she's got to find a town accountant, and she's got to, you know, and the whole cycle starts again, you know, so.
Yes, maybe more, Bill, for complementing Larry's points, the question could be asked, in my opinion, in terms of would even someone like Mary benefit from basically, let's call it, weaknesses that would be identified that was not known before. The point being is that, with what we said about, if I'm part of a new management, wouldn't I want to know any, I wouldn't say significant internal control weakness, but I would rather know ahead of time rather than these issues coming, again, understanding that there would be, let's call it, some investment in terms of sacrificing in time, but at the same time, if those issues would be identified ahead of time, then perhaps that would help Mary and the new management working toward solving those issues rather than having to inherit working without knowing them and wait a year. Again, food for thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's never going to be a great time for an audit, and it's always going to be a strain, is the bottom line. So I think, you know, I don't know when you guys are meeting next, but I think my feeling would be to defer to you guys, you know, to make us a recommendation. I definitely see both sides of it. But, you know, even this committee hasn't been in front of us in a couple of years because, you know, things have really just kind of fallen through the cracks. Yeah. So I think it might be a good idea, as painful as it is just my opinion, to just budget for it and plan for it. But again, that's just my 2 cents. I'll leave it to you guys to come back to us, you know, after you meet and make a recommendation. So, any other questions? Nothing?
Actually, I'm just thinking about from limited to full scope. Just make it very explicit. It factors in, it's like an internal control review, like an in-depth review.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because
They will test the controls.
Yeah.
Right now, a limited scope, they'll say, oh, you have a control, good.
It's
And this
there.
would just be like a one-time thing, not, this would just be, you know, every 5 years or so, not every year, so.
No, it's I'd say every 5 years, or we have significant changes, a lot of turnover in department, that's when you want to do it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So when do you all meet again, or do you have to have another meeting? And you can,
We-
we have time, that's a
we-
good thing, you know.
Well, the fiscal year 23 audit, will be ending in June 30th, will not start until
Till
fall.
September-
Okay.
Until fall.
Okay.
So ideally, the audit committee will meet when we get the audit report, fiscal year 22 completed. Hopefully it's on
Earlier.
time,
Yeah.
earlier and
Yeah.
on time. So if it's on time, we'll meet hopefully the first half of the year. And if I can get the fiscal year 22, I will include that report to the town. So I have 21 and 22 to be reported. But regardless, we will convene a meeting before the start of fiscal year 23, so we can make the recommendations.
One of the things that we know, but they might not know, I mean, unless you sat and watched that we had it televised, but unless you watched that actual show, one of the reasons it's so late with this COVID thing, it's like everything else. They came in about the same time last year. They performed the audit, everything was going great, and then at the last minute, the goalpost got moved back by the feds and what they call the single audit piece. Oh, wait a minute, now we want this. And so then they had to come back and redo all the audits again, which pushed it more towards the end of the year. It should probably be done, March, February, something like that. I mean, I hate to put it right on it, but I mean, it shouldn't be like the way it was this year, where it was like kind of like moving into July.
Saying the limited scope 2022 audit should be done in February, March timeframe.
Yeah, or the bigger scope or as well.
Well, the biggest
No,
scope will be
yeah.
fiscal year 23.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, you mean
Yeah, the
okay?
22.
I'm sorry.
The current system
Yeah.
should be done in
Yeah,
February,
all
March.
right.
That one's underway now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's accurate.
yeah, and thank you to Larry, who's really made sure this is kept on track as well. So I am fully confident that depending on where that lands, you guys will make a recommendation and either meet if you have to, if the audit's not back, hopefully it is, fingers crossed, and you can, do both those things at once, so.
Again, I just want to be clear, I'm not opposed, I think it's a good idea, actually,
Right.
to do a full audit, because it's been a while. But I just worry that you're going to have a lot of people with a lot of learning curves trying to figure out how the systems work, how the current limits are in place, and to see them for themselves what kind of recommendations they might make on their own.
I think Bill has been in tune directly with the office. I mean, Mike as well. I mean, I'm not cutting you out, but I mean, Bill and Mike have been in tune with the office, and I think they we're constantly up there yapping in their ear about, look, at these are the challenges we've got, and geez, we can't get this done, or this is hard to do, and everything. So I think he's looking at it as am I. Like I say, once I'm done, I mean, and I'm not. I would be more than happy to converse with both the auditor and Marie. I mean, and not just say, I'm sorry, I'm done. Don't look at me. But I think that I tend to be like the guy on, what do they call it, the guy on the ground. And I think that, I'm looking at it like, hey, Maria, are you going to be all right here, or whatever. And that's what it is. It's the audit itself. I don't have any problem with that,
What does the recommendation of the audit firm, the selection of the audit firm entail? Have you been through that at all, or with you?
Okay. At the last meeting, we talked briefly about, we've been using the same audit firm for a very long time. So, I mean, a lot of members here worked in the private sector, and if you're a public company, they might change every 3, every 5, every 6 years. We have the same auditor for some time. It's different in municipal, I understand that, but if there's enough interest from the committee to consider an RFP next year, we will do it. We won't do it. We'll tell management to do it.
And even if you don't, I mean, issuing an RFP is not a bad idea, just every so often
Right.
anyway, from a procurement
Right.
standpoint now.
Right.
We have this procurement person too, so.
Everybody's new on this committee. It would just be good to know who's out there and
Yeah.
who usually does
Yeah.
this stuff. Yeah.
It is a pretty limited group, though, I
figured,
will tell you that.
It's funny because, I mean, when I say funny, I just mean odd. It's in the private sector, I'm sure that there are probably 20,000 audit firms to do various things. But it's funny, I've been like doing it for about 40 years, and I keep running into the same 6 firms. Okay, went over to this town, and it's like, okay, it's this guy, and then
It's
you go back, and
it's a
it's like-
rotating group.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the same.
there's about 6 to 7 that, I mean, I'm not saying that that's it, but
And they're good, there's not.
they're all good. I mean, because all of them have survived and they've been around. I think of there's a name, Melanson and Heath, they've been out there for years.
Roselli and Clark.
Brown, who's?
Roselli and Clark.
Roselli and Clark, Brown. The guy that I worked with in East Bridgewater now because Malloy Lynch, Bonanvanu, or whatever. And I mean, but you keep seeing them over and over again, and it's like okay, this week do the rotation.
It's the same in the private sector. There's only 5 or 6 firms that really do 90% of all the audits.
Yeah.
The concern of longevity between the auditor and management is you get too close, and it becomes a friendship, and that's the overarching concern. It's not that there's issues around quality. I'm sure there's no issues around quality here. I'm sure we're not the city of Quincy that last week found that $3 million was embezzled from their pension fund. But it happens.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is.
Really, no one thinks it's going to happen, but
No one thinks it's going to happen. And then who's holding the bag on that, right? The board. Board of
Believe it or
Selectmen.
not, there's worse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's worse than even Quincy.
Oh, no,
That one,
sure.
whatever,
I'm just saying, it's a familiarity that happens when you have people working so closely together for a long period of time. Each one is reluctant to call the other one out,
It's a best practice. At the end of the day, if something goes wrong, the select board is going to get a lot of heat. So, and management.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it sounds like you've got a couple topics then for your next meeting, and I'm confident that you guys are going to be all over it to come back to us. So
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you 100%. I think that we're going to replace people that are leaving. We're going to replace with good people too that have probably been through an audit.
Yep.
And so, I feel confident with what your committee is going to decide. I feel like I would.
Yeah, there's
I
a
would
lot of
support.
experience in this.
We will recommend to the
Yeah.
select board.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So we'll look forward to that then.
So just a thought that you made to strengthen that thought, because in the previous community I worked in, they actually had a bylaw that said that you had to switch every 6 years. You're required to. So we did do that in Dedham.
That's something we could bring it up with
Mm-hmm.
the.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing.
But I think it's at this point I'm more interested in following the bylaws and
Yeah,
trying to make
getting
more
back on
changes to
track.
it.
Right. Yeah.
Let's get back on track.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Authelet and Mr. Ferencik. Always a pleasure to have you gentlemen here. And I know Jack's birthday's over, but we haven't seen you in person, so we're still going to be talking about your 90th birthday. Wishing you a happy birthday.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. I'll move this, I don't want to sit on it. Thank you very much for this opportunity to appear
We're excited to hear about this.
before the select board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sure that anyone coming in here tonight would notice that Spanish-American War tribute just across the hall to William Chisholm. That was an Eagle Scout project by Sean Kelly under the guidance of Troop Leader Tony Gonslaves, who is here this evening. Right now, that is our only tribute to Spanish-American War veterans. So after months of unbelievable research, the support and encouragement of the Foxborough Historical Commission and Town Clerk Bob Cutler, the following names constitute our list of Spanish-American War veterans. Everdeen Charles, Fletcher Fred W., Hearn George, Kelly Thomas J., Kirby Joseph, Krebs Charles A., Lilliman Dr. Frank C., Wells Roy T. So I would like to give you a brief bio of each of those gentlemen. Charles Everdeen was anxious to join the Navy, so he enlisted aboard the U.S. Wabash in Boston Harbor. But there was something unusual. He was a minor, only 16 years old, but presented such a case The recruiters thought they would go through all of the paperwork taken to bring him into the service. And they welcomed him as an apprentice and worked on helping bring in some of the new enlistees. Soon he was transferred to the USS Constellation down in Maryland and working down there. But every time they wanted him to do something, there was a click because, can a miner do this? Can we do this? Finally, the Bureau of Navigation ordered his discharge. Fred Fletcher. Fred was at sea with the Navy for 5 years before all this tension came up. He was on the American ships, on the shipping lanes around the world. He was assigned to the USS Wabash, but transferred to the Navy aboard the Southerly once the Spanish-American War was declared. Soon, he was patrolling the Atlantic from Boston to Jamaica to keep the enemy out of the coastal waters. And when the war ended, he re-enlisted and retired in 1917. George Hearn. George was highly rated in the Navy as an electrician, drawn to many locations around the globe when it was possible, advantageous to have American shipping show up in this new global economy. But when the Cuban crisis erupted, he was sworn into the Spanish-American War and transferred to the cruiser Buffalo, protecting the Atlantic coastline and performing electrical services for all the other ships. Imagine when his ship pulled into harbor. Guys that are in there with no electrical service could get him to come over from his boat and help them on theirs. Thomas Kelly. Thomas was serving on the dispatch boat Calumet when the Coast Guard providing ship-to-shore contact or shore-to-shore contact for any dispatches of information essential to ships know in between when they're in the harbor, they had no way to get around. So his smaller boat went ship to ship, bringing vital services and information. Joseph Kirby, with hopes of going to sea, enlisted in the Coast Guard on the deck of the cutter Dallas in Boston Harbor. He was assigned to the Gershon, a revenue cutter, to patrol Lake Michigan and adjacent waters. At the outbreak of the war, he was sworn into the Navy, and the Gershon was reassigned to Boston Harbor to patrol the North Atlantic coast to protect shipping and limit enemy activity. Charles Krebs, the 1st Mass Light Infantry, drew Krebs into the Spanish-American War, and he enlisted at Fort Warren, part of the harbor defense of the Revolution era, which had been reactivated. He remained there until the end of the war, protecting from that shoreline naval activity going on in the harbor. Dr. Frank Lilliman. Frank had a medical practice here in Foxboro. He served as inspector of meats and provisions. But the government sought his expertise when the war broke out, and he enlisted. Leaving a wife and family behind, he served overseas protecting food supplies and personnel. But on his way home, from that great distance, he planned the most extensive family celebration you could ever imagine. And I don't think anyone's ever seen anything like it before or since. Roy Wells. Roy's was a local student, Foxboro student, attending college in Boston when the news of the war broke out. He and several students went out to Fort Warren to volunteer. That was very common that whole groups of students would go. And Company D, 1st Regiment Mass Volunteers, welcomed them for a 2-year commitment. They had to go no further. They remained right there to protect naval forces afloat and ashore as they were laying mines in Boston Harbor to deter enemy encroachment. They served with pride. So that is the list of the men And I would hope to be able to add some other information about others worthy of recognition in Foxborough, but right now I'll defer to Mark.
Well, thanks, Jack. So we would probably ask your approval of these names, so that we might prepare a tablet in honor of the veterans and place that in Memorial Hall. We already have in Memorial Hall all the names of pre-World War I wars, the Revolutionary, Civil War, et cetera. So we'd like to add this there. Would also, a proclamation to be read at Veterans Day would also be appreciated if we can do that. That's it.
Now, if I may continue, while all this tension was building up around the world, with nobody was sure it was going to lead to war at that time, but the tension was high. People in Foxborough were very, very concerned about the people in Cuba and how they were being treated by the Spaniards, and the stories they would hear coming back and what those people were suffering. So you had many, many groups in town, church groups, volunteer groups, fraternal and civic organizations, everybody, anybody. They were raising money, collecting food, get clothing, anything that they could ship down there and help these people. And when the ship Maine was sunk in Cuban Harbor, the shock of it all and the loss to the military and what it meant to the civilians, the people in this town were so concerned over that and its impact. They had a service in the Baptist church, the 4 churches that we had at that time. They all pooled their resources. All the 4 choirs performed, and they went in there and had a service for those people and those servicemen. They were so concerned. When Commander Dewey went into Manila Harbor, one of the greatest battles of the war, we had the grandest celebration here in town about his victory. And they had a bonfire. They had people with cymbals and horns and bells and anything that would make a noise. The land troops were gathering primarily in other enlistment places and brought together up in South Framingham. And then they were going to be transferred down to Maryland to Camp Meigs. So they gave word that they were coming through Foxborough by train. Now picture this, 59 railroad cars broken into 4 divisions, a half hour scheduled in between divisions, and those trains started coming through Foxborough. And hundreds upon hundreds of Foxborough residents lining both sides of the track to salute those guys with any kind of noise they could make while they're going. When they left Framingham, there was a great big arch built over the railroad track with a floral motif, and it said, "God be with you till we meet again." And that was the whole premise for the whole thing. But the people of Foxborough were feeling this and expressing this. And they just did so many things like that to help out. But what I would like to do, if I can, is to give you some idea of the credits of the people that helped us bring all of this together. When Sean asked me to help on his Eagle Scout project, I'm glad I could. But that was then we discovered the unbelievable, that Foxborough did not have a single record of anybody in that war. Imagine you take a blank pad of paper and you go 125 years back into the darkness and find something to write about on those people. But many, many Spanish-American War veterans are buried here in Foxborough, and all of their graves are marked as veterans' graves. They have flags on their grave. a new flag prior to Memorial Day every year, as law requires. But then, so we want to get the list of all these guys so we can then start to check on those, because being a veteran is one thing, but you had to be living in Foxborough when you entered the service to have a place on our tablet. So we had to separate the two. So Bob Cutler obviously knew right away that he had no records per se by that subject. But he immediately looked for relatively reflective information from other records that would help. And he got on the idea that we had all these young men coming into town hall, notifying the clerk's office that they were going to come in to register to vote. So you had all these young guys registering to vote. Now, an extra blessing on this, it was somebody in the clerk's office making this list. It wasn't all the guys signing themselves. So you had one talented person with beautiful conversive writing to make this list so we could read it. And what we could then do is any names we came up with, come in, and Mark spent many, many hours there at that table, and that would give us some of our first indications on that. And Emily Bonin, Historical Commission, she agreed to search all the town archives and funneled back to me any name that had a reference to the war so that we could begin there. And that went on for months. Mark searched all the cemetery records, all the burials of all the veterans, and again, most of they would indicate veterans, and fortunately, most which conflict. But we were able to add those names as well. And I also had many stories from other sources and stories to put together, all into this main focus. Veteran Service Officer Ali Rodriguez had no files whatsoever in her office, but she wanted to help. She did have an archive that she could use, but she was not allowed to give us the identification of using it. She would have to do the searching, but she would require date of birth. Well, that's the most obvious lack we had on any of the others. We didn't have a date of birth. So there was nothing there that we could give her. But she did give me the name of a Keith Bazoo, a military archivist for the Mass Military Division, Adjutant General's Office in Boston. I wrote Keith a letter of introduction and said I'd send him our list of names. He responded so quickly, he hadn't even got our list of names yet. And he had 3 names that we didn't have on our list, writing back. And that started the give and take, and it continues. And then I was able to use his site, and not only did we check all the names, but I have a detailed record of every ship that they sailed on, what their missions were, what they did, what they accomplished. And it's amazing that all of our first veterans all went to sea, and the few others supported veterans at sea. We didn't have any land crews at all. It was all naval, but it was unique to our guys. But all those records of those boats and those people and all those others will also be in the story at Memorial Hall, so that anyone coming in to see the plaque would be able to access that information, as well as more information on each of these veterans that I have here. So that is where we stand right now, and what we are in hopes of is that we can get a temporary list made up and get it posted, give everybody a chance to become familiar with what we're doing, and they can begin to reflect their own family history to add to it. But then eventually that we would have the marker cast, and it would be displayed in Memorial Hall, so that we would finally be where we thought we had been all these years of having the name of every veteran on a plaque in the town of Foxborough. And I think that is the kind of record Foxborough would like to have. And with the blessings of the select board, we could move in that direction.
Well, I think you certainly have our blessing. What an amazing kind of gap there. And then how fabulous that you're able to, tell the story of those veterans and honor them as well, so.
Yep. Well, and we still, we're still gathering more information comes in. If any other name came up, we would jump right on it to find
Right,
it.
right.
But we're not saying that we have guaranteed that there's no other names out there.
Maybe with some press, though,
But-
you might have,
Yep.
people come forward.
So,
Make some empty slots in the plaque.
so I thank you for the privilege of being able to do this.
Yeah, we do have a motion to accept that, but do we want to talk about the markers, and then we can do both motions?
Sure.
Okay, great.
All right, so part two is the town square markers. This is an example of one that's been totally, almost destroyed. But there's 29 of them around town, and they honor those who made the supreme sacrifice from wars from World War I up through the current. And they're on street corners near the people's homes. Another reaffirmation of our promise that we would never forget them and what they did for their country. So these first signs were for World War I servicemen. They were put up in 1923. And I can't find any information of any replacement. So like this one, I guess it goes back to 23. Over the years, they've been painted many, many times, suffered damage from cars and storms, and generally looking a lot the worse for wear. Local resident John Gitani has a passion for maintaining these. He makes it his life's work to paint them. He takes them down, brings them to his house. Obviously, he can't do too many with the weather limitations, and they're just getting to be it's not working out anymore. The efforts are falling short of expectations. So we reached out, we looked around at different signs around town, different towns, and we found one in Milford, a very readable sign. It also has the name of the applicable war and the branch of service. There's a picture attached to this thing here. I talked to the veterans agent in Milford. Those signs have been there since about 2015 with no problems. So we asked the vendor to revise a layout and send us a sample. The Milford one had a star, they had a flag. We asked them to replace it with a star since we put a flag on the pole. And we got one replacement for this Lawrence W. Foster Square. It has now been installed. It's on the common across from Main Street. You can probably see from your house. And you can take a look at that and see what you think. And my picture attached there shows the old and the new. And as you can see, the old one it's broken, it's welded, and they're not all like that, but there's a lot of them that are in pretty bad shape. So we talked with Veterans Agent Ellie Rodriguez, reviewed the plans. She enthusiastically likes them. The cost, if these were approved to redo the other remaining 28, would be somewhere around $6,000. If we do get approval for this, then we would probably set up some kind of a fund and solicit donations from townspeople. That's it.
It's nice how the new ones have the war and the branch of service,
Yeah.
too, on
Yeah.
them as well. It's nice
A
to
little more
have.
info, yeah. They're very visible.
Yeah, they're very nice,
Yeah,
very nice.
very
I think
nice.
they look good.
Yeah, I'll have to check.
I
that one
would
out.
strongly urge that we do this through donations,
Mm-hmm.
as we did other memorials and flagpole and everything else. Let the people be
Yep.
part of it.
I've already had some interest. People asked to sign up, so.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Any questions? Those both, thank you so much. It's always great when you come in, Jack. I love to hear what you uncover and discover and hear the stories. It's one of my favorite
new.
things.
Pleasure to be here, and I just thank you for all your support and encouragement and for the services that you are providing to town. And much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions before we have two motions? No? All right, so we've got two motions for the accepting the names and then the replacement of the markers.
I updated the motion to include the Memorial Hall plaque. You just refreshed.
Oh, okay, if you refresh, hit this one right here, yeah, and then you'll have it. It'll just appear like magic. So we've got three motions.
Okay.
Oh,
Where to go now?
I see the three now. Here, you want this one? Got it. And then you'll have to let us know when that's, I'm sure you'll let us know, but when that's in Memorial Hall, it's always nice to stop up and see whatever's happening.
Okay, we got them all.
Okay, all right, great. So three motions.
Okay, motion to accept report on Foxborough Spanish-American veterans from the town historian, Jack Authelet, and approve the marker recognizing Foxborough Spanish-American War veterans from Memorial Hall.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, then a motion to approve the installation of 29 new town markers for existing town squares.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, great. We look forward to hearing more about both projects.
Foxborough stands tall.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Hey, Mr. Authelet, before you guys leave, I'd like to openly tell you I would be happy to make a $100 donation to the cause.
All right.
And not that I think you guys won't raise these funds, because I think you'll easily raise these funds, but I will offer that the Partners in Patriotism love to be the top off. So if you hit a certain point and you hit a standstill,
Yep.
that might be a great place to ask. But I kind of think you guys might raise this money on your own.
Let's get the ball rolling, I'll match your donation.
There you go.
I'm gonna match you too.
All right.
Look at that.
And you know, while Jack's still sitting here, I want to mention over the last 6 months, Jack, I've read both your books. The book on the town of Foxborough and the one I had gotten when you were up town selling the books, the World War II.
Oh, the expanded.
Both are
Yeah.
wonderful reads. You know, if you want to learn anything about Foxborough's history,
Yep.
they were great. And I've since passed them on to other people in town, so.
And he will autograph copies as well.
And I made sure I got them back because you did autograph
Now,
both
I'll
of
tell
them for
you,
me.
as long as we're helping other people.
But they're great reads.
St. Mary's Christmas Fair is coming up, and there have been 3 World War II books donated for the bidding in their silent auction, and 3 copies of the 100 Years of Innovation, the history of the Foxborough Company.
Ooh.
So both those books will be on the auction at St. Mary's Christmas Fair.
All right.
You know, this is a phenomenal thing you've done for these 11 veterans and their families, giving them the recognition. So I couldn't applaud you more. My father, World War II veteran, Omaha Beach, Battle of the Bulge, you know, so you really tap into something when you talk about veterans
Yep.
and what they've done for this country and the willingness, I think, for us to make a contribution will be
Yep.
strong.
It
Just to add to what
it was
you've done
such a
already.
privilege
Right.
to be able to get those stories into print. Because, well, one of our greatest commitments is we will not forget. But just to get those in so that generations even yet unborn can read what those men and women did when our nation called at that time. And most incredible story.
But what's also kind of neat, though, is towards the end of the book, you also talk quite in depth what the town did during that
absolutely.
time. During that
Ab-
time, and the
absolutely.
sacrifices, you know, the people still living at home, and I forgot the name of the paper, the V that they sent to the people overseas.
Truly yours.
Very truly yours, yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Remarkable.
So many Foxborough servicemen wrote back and said how every guy in the company they were in wished their town sent out one of those very truly yours. But the purpose was to keep the people in the service up to date about what was going on in town while they're all around the world, so they wouldn't be total strangers coming back. But from those letters coming back, we would pick up different pieces of information. So somebody was waiting on a child line somewhere, and one of his old high school classmates walked by. They never even knew they were in the same part of the world, and they met out there. And just what a joy to have captured that. And I personally feel one of the most privileged people to have been here in Foxborough at the time I have, even though it adds up to an awful lot of years, but to know the people I did and to be able to put a lot of this together and carry it forward. And hopefully this sense of community, which is so unique to us, is going to be passed on generation to generation to generation.
Special.
Yeah, and you guys, obviously you mentioned Johnny Gattani. I was not surprised to see this because probably 6 months or so, he kind of hit me up and we were talking and he was telling me the idea and where he was going to go with it, and I think it's great. And like you said, I mean, he told me the story. He said, Stephanie, I've painted these signs so many times, and he said they're just. He said it was heartbreaking to him that he couldn't really do it the justice that he wanted to. He said it's just time for a new one. So
Got 100 years out of him.
Longevity, that's for sure.
If you're watching Johnny,
You get value out of that.
thank you for the
That's right,
time
no
and
question.
effort he put into it. Very passionate about the signs. So yeah, this will be great. It'll be great.
Yep. All right.
All right, thank you so much.
So very much.
All right, so the next item is the special town meeting, and we will not be voting to move it to January 9th. Since the agenda came out, the person who does the scheduling at the high school said that the high school is not available. So here we are again.
We were off last week when we tried to schedule it.
Yeah,
and
so here we are again
on Monday,
with
so
special town meeting. So we've got a couple of things we can do. We can pick a new date, and, these dates are pushing back further and further. Or we can postpone until the spring. And personally, much like the audit committee thing that we talked about last night, I see pluses and minuses on both sides. But there are some things that have other downstream effects, like the public hearings are happening actually Thursday for the zoning articles. Those are only good for 6 months. So there's some things to set, even, things to think about. So I had asked Bill to just kind of talk about both sides, and then I think tonight we have to, make a decision or give some directions as far as what we are going to do with special town meeting, because quite honestly, it's getting closer and closer to annual town meeting.
Well, something, it's so funny because, I was fully prepared if what we had thought was just to pick this date, not knowing that it wasn't available. The more I thought about it myself today, I kept thinking, I'm like, geez, what happens if it could be any time, snowstorm, something. And I thought if we had to move it, I think sometimes we struggle at town meeting just to get people there, like at that time of year. And, a lot of the seniors like to go to town meeting, and on a really cold January night, might we not even get them? So I'm kind of glad we're going to talk a little bit more about it.
When Bill called me, I said, I think we got to really talk about both sides. And I do think you need to explain why we need to even go to January, because I don't think we've had a meeting since we have to talk about that with the tax rate and everything. It's kind of complicated. So turn it over to Bill to give some context there.
All right, well, thank you. So with this was a meeting which we originally started out talking about doing something in November, but there is a big statewide election going on in November, which complicated the timing of that, and obviously the town clerk has a lot to do with setting up the meeting space and the area where that meeting is held. And so that pushed the meeting into a couple weeks beyond the time we were looking at initially, so which made it later than we normally would do. And then we get into the issue of, geez, we're going to be bumping up against Thanksgiving week, and having it before the week was a challenge, and then the week after was a challenge because people travel, et cetera, and it's tough to get people engaged under those conditions. We then settled on the December 9th date, which we then had to move because of what happened with the tax rate, because the state came back and says, well, if you're going to do that, then you have to, we won't approve your tax rate until after you hold the town meeting, which made it very late in the process. That made the finance department nervous about getting bills out in time, making sure that that process had enough room in order to get the bills out properly, because there is a problem if you don't get it out before December 31st, it becomes problematic in terms of getting, collecting on interest rates if people are late in paying their bills. So then that pushes, that came back to the conversation that we had internally about, well, let's shoot for January 9th, which, was, a date that we had settled on staff-wise, but we still were waiting for an answer from the high school because we were unable to get confirmation on that until actually yesterday. So yesterday, when Christina checked with and called, had called and got confirmation, they said the date's not available. So there's a conflict with something going on at the high school that night. So then we went back and said, okay, so what are the options? And don't forget, there's a Monday holiday in January as well, which further complicates the dates. And the date before the holiday was tied up, as well as the date. The earliest date we could do it was January 30th. Right? So January 30th is a legitimate date that's available right now. The next date would be February 13th, day before Valentine's Day, but, still a legitimate day to hold a meeting. And then the next one will be the 27th of February, which is late as well. And then now we're only now a few months away from the annual town meeting anyways. So there are pros and cons. You could go forward. If you look at the current agenda, and the warrant items that are on there, there are a total of 9 articles, and all of which could be done and taken up at the annual town meeting as a special, if you will, and maybe even some into the warrant itself, the general warrant. But there is a concern because we did have a petitioned article, which came from, and Attorney Burr is here tonight to speak to that they're anxious to kind of move forward sooner rather than later. And I respect that completely because, there is a process that they have to go through in order to get approval to move their billboard project forward. So there are pros and cons, and the pros are that, if you also get this meeting done now, it is easier for the next administration to go into town meeting, the annual town meeting, with not having to deal with this additional items to be considered. I am going to be here until the transition is complete, so I'll be able to help anybody through that process until that's done, so that can be done. But, however, it does complicate the meeting. The con is that we don't have to do another meeting. It would be done effectively the same night as the annual town meeting if the board chose not to hold the meeting earlier than then, and it would just simply be, an additional part of the annual town meeting itself. So those are the pros and the cons, and I'm completely neutral about that in that respect. I mean, I think, yeah, sure, it's additional work for me while I'm here, and I'm actually on the back nine, so to speak, in terms of finishing out my career. But I'm more than willing and more than happy to do it. So I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm just going to say it's available as an option. If you don't do it, it's not my issue. It's going to be somebody else's to deal with, and so it's something to think about that way. Again, it will complicate the meeting at the annual in that regard.
What was Bob's opinion?
Bob and I weren't able to connect today because today we had elections today, so we weren't able to connect.
Okay. Because I do think that's an important, I'm kind of a little indifferent, on one side, having 9 more articles on an already, we know there's going to be a lot of zoning stuff on Springtown meeting, so I'm kind of apt to let's just bang them out, but I want to be respectful if it's a lot of work for Bob and team too.
Well, actually, it'd be less, it's more work for Bob if we have 2 meetings.
That's what I'm saying.
It's less work if they have
him,
one,
yeah.
we have one.
Yep.
But he's used to doing 2 anyway, so
Yeah.
that's,
And it could almost be like a dry run if we have the new town manager for then, for the smaller one. So I wanted to hear what the board thought. I could really go either way, but I think my gut would probably be to, 9 articles does still take quite a bit of time to go through. We've advertised, we've done the legal ads for the, we want to get our name changed to select board. There's a couple other zoning ones that are advertised. Those public hearings supposed to happen Thursday. So I think that although I'm, a bit indifferent, if I had to pick one way or the other, I'd probably say, let's just do the meeting and do it as soon as, whatever the first date is available. But on the flip side, it's hard to get a quorum for a special town meeting, and I think it's gonna be even harder to get a quorum in January. So, I'm like this and just kind of want to hear what the.
I think a few, and I was actually at a town meeting last night in my own town, where 600 people showed up.
Wow.
So it was a big issue, and talking about a library, building a new library, but 600 people, I don't think I've been to a town meeting that big, ever. So that was, people got the word out, and they did a really good job of using social media, texting people, reaching out and connecting with people, making sure everybody was aware that meeting was being held. So they did a good job of that, and I'm happy to, delve into that a little bit more to see what methods they use. But I myself received several text messages from people saying, don't forget to come to the town meeting. So word can get out. There are different ways to do that.
And then we have the citizens petition. And I thought in fairness to them, they've gone through a lot of work. We have the warrant open, we've closed the warrant. I know that you represent the applicant or the citizens petition for that. So, that's another factor to put into play. But then on the flip side, you may not get a lot of people, and it's, is that something that could maybe go one way or another because of low attendance, so.
Madam Chair,
I
do you
think
want?
my opinion would be just to have one meeting. I just think it's easier, a little less work on Bob, although that's what he gets paid to do, But I kind of feel like, I know 9 articles sounds like a lot, but I think the 9 that we have aren't too controversial.
No, they're
Like,
not. They're not, yeah.
I think we might go through them quickly. Of course, I'm saying that now. We'll see what happens by the time they come. So, that's just my opinion. It might be better just one meeting, get it all done.
Madam Chair, since Mr. Burr is here, in fairness to him, he's representing the petition now, unless there's and you may want to address, it's up to you, but he may address any concern that
Yeah,
why
because
you
that's my
want to
first
do
thing I
that.
said, well, what does
Yeah.
the citizens
Yeah.
petition think about this, and just in fairness to them. Do you want to come up to the table and introduce yourself for anyone that hasn't seen you before?
Thank you.
Just kind of briefly let us know where the applicant's at.
Very briefly, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Robert Burr, representing American Outdoor Advertising and also the Rounds family of Springbrook Road. When we heard that there'd be a special town meeting, they did work to get signatures. I believe they have 175 for a special town meeting. I understand all the reasons why it's now being pushed out because of DOR considerations. I'm a former member of a Board of Selectmen, so I really don't think that this is my position to push it in any type of way. I have a client that's interested certainly in the special town meeting because we believe that the special town meeting was going to occur. But this is really your call, obviously. And we did do some, just very briefly, because I know we'll have time to talk about it at a different date. We did make the sign bylaw far more restrictive, 1,000 feet distance from existing residents as opposed to 300 feet that was at the last annual town meeting, and 1,500 feet separation between billboards versus 1,000 feet, which is the state regulation. So I would.
And just to back it up a little bit, the Board of Selectmen supported that or brought forward that article last time. It did not pass. This is not the Board of Selectmen bringing it forward now. They've done that on their own through citizens petition. So not conventional that we see it that fast, but just so that people understand, how it's coming back up for those that may not be as intimately involved as we are to understand the differences.
I'd also mention I'm working with Attorney Frank Spillane as well, too, who couldn't be here this evening on this.
So would this mean that the petitioners would have to, or not petitioners, I guess, would they be petitioners?
Yeah, petitioners,
Okay,
yeah.
Would they be forced to get a whole new?
I don't know, that's a great question.
Say it again.
Would they be forced to get a whole new set of signatures?
I don't believe so, because it was put on the warrant. That's not the issue. The issue is just the date.
So we're really just pushing the whole
Because it would be like a special town
Yeah.
meeting within the annual
Exactly.
town meeting, so.
Yeah.
Two quick thoughts. One is a question. Could we, if we did pick a date in January, could we pick 2 dates as a rain/snow day?
You could do that. Because I did talk to Frank earlier today as well, the moderator, and Frank Spillane, the moderator, and And I said, the big concern, of course, is weather and that time of year. And that, so that's a good thought. I didn't think about the alternative date, but you could pick both dates. You could say.
Reserve both days and have
January
it-
30th and have February 13th as a backup.
as a
date.
backup. And having said that, I would lean more towards doing it, to get it out of the way,
Yeah,
and
so
I- and
that's
I'm-
how, it's a little bit of a long night anyway, and the thought of adding 9 more articles.
9 more articles, and this could be a little, it was discussed a lot when we brought up the signs last time. I think if we had the potential for a date, and then, reserve both nights up at the high school just in case, make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's with Frank and Bob, I'd be more inclined. And I'm, like, on the fence also, but I'm leaning towards getting it done and over with.
Yeah. Do we need to take action on this eve? Obviously, we know it's not happening. We will agree it's not going to happen in
Yeah.
December. We have to.
It's not happening,
vote
yeah,
on-
January 9th, it's not happening in December.
Yeah, so we do have to vote on that, right? Just to officially say it's not happening. Could we get Bob's opinion just before we move forward?
Absolutely. Today was just the day.
We could,
we-
yeah, we could probably even
Yeah.
take a vote pending his opinion, just so we have something, because I think
Yeah.
we all just want, like, if this is gonna happen,
Yeah.
like, nail down a date.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you, generally speaking, he was, the biggest concern he had was November because of the election conflicts.
Right.
Right.
But he was less concerned, in fact, virtually no concern about having another date. So, at least that was what I gathered from him.
Yeah, I think just because it was open, there's been a lot of work to go into it, I think kind of in fairness to the citizens petition, and, quite frankly, I'd like to get our select board name changed too, I hate to push that one off again, kind of selfishly. So Seth, Dennis, what's your thought?
Yeah,
Any
no,
thoughts?
I was in favor of the January 30th date. Worst thing that could happen is it gets canceled, and you then end up doubling up anyway at the later date. And the alternative of a fallback date is even better, so.
My only, excuse me, my only thought is there any risk to pushing this out? And I'm just looking through the articles again, and it doesn't look like there's any risk to having things voted on 3-4 months later.
No, and
Well,
I talked to Paige about the public hearing, because that was kind of where I was most concerned. And she said as long as it was in 6 months, so she won't have to redo that process. She will have to redo that whole process. I
we
mean, the
wait
hearings
till
haven't
May.
happened yet, but they'll have to redo the legal notices and everything.
If we wait till
If
May.
we wait till May, yeah. Which it's a $200 ad. I mean, just, if you're looking for numbers, I asked.
Electronic billboards.
And then Seth, if it is January 30th, I probably will not be here, so you'll be acting. If that changes your, not that there's much to do, but.
Oh, he's definitely putting it off then.
Or you, I can't even remember. You're vice chair. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was I-
Yeah, no, you're off the hook, Steph, you're off the hook. I know I'm away for a work trip on the 30th.
All right,
but-
I'm definitely voted no, then. No,
Right.
no, that's fine.
I said, let's move it, let's go, I mean, let's
Are you good with that, Seth? What's your thought? I like,
Yeah, fine,
keep it on the books?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so was there anything motion-wise we have to do?
Well, if you're prepared to make a motion tonight, the motion would be to the effect of, the board moved that the meeting originally slated for, was the original date?
December
was
5th.
December 5th.
Yeah.
Be rescheduled to January 30th with a fallback date of February 13th.
Okay, so we're gonna go so it's gotta be a Monday, so it would have to be the 13th. It wouldn't be like the following day.
You could have it on any day you want, but the challenge with doing that is that people are used to doing town meetings on Mondays in this town. And if you put it on a different date, then it conflicts with your schedule as well. So,
And if it's a snow emergency, or.
Right, probably the next day
It might be a
not
couple of
good.
days.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, good to talk through.
And Bill, and you said both those dates are good?
Yeah.
Both dates are available,
Sorry,
yes.
I have them written down here, they're not there, but.
Both good with the school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will note, though, that, and I'm actually, that's why I think you should do it this way, but the moderator will tell you that there's many times where they've been able to reschedule for the next day, but we don't know what those dates are available, so I would just, this is probably the best direction right now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of would like the snow day to maybe just hold the day after too, like if we can check in on it. Because if it's on everyone's radar to then like wait a couple weeks,
Well, the next day is, we have a Board of Selectmen meeting.
yeah, but we'd know, you know,
True.
we can always, you know, kind of plan. I think far out enough, like Friday would know,
Well,
you know.
don't
if
forget, you're in the
there's-
middle of a selection process, too.
Right. Okay, forget that.
I wouldn't want to change those dates. Those dates are
right?
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay. So it sounds like Bill made a motion that I think we can be so moved.
Well, I can't make it, but you
No.
can.
Well,
you
so
can-
moved, we can so moved, yeah, we can so move.
I can draft it, but I can't say
Bill
it,
made
yeah.
a draft motion, sorry, that we can, you know, so move. And I have the dates written down here, so it would be from December 5th to January 30th with a weather date of February 13th, both of which are available. And we can start getting, save the dates out.
Right.
And move forward, because, you know, and let's just make sure Bob has no major concerns also, but, you know, it would make one heck of a long night, I think.
Yep.
And just more stuff to redo that we don't want.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
Okay.
Who made
Further
the-
discussion?
Who made the motion?
You.
Okay.
Good
So
job.
moved.
I thought so.
It was a so moved, yeah.
Congratulations, Dennis.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good.
All right, and we'll invite you back probably in mid-January,
Yes.
you know, to discuss the citizens petition
Certainly.
if you'd like, so.
Okay, great. Thank you
More to
very
come.
much.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Hopefully it doesn't move again.
Yes. Thank you.
Put it in
Yeah.
pen,
Thank you,
everyone.
Have a good night, Bob. See you.
Thank you.
All right. So going into Assistant Town Manager's update.
Okay, two things to update. First, for recruitments, we have two that are ongoing. One is the Human Resources Director. That posting closes out on November 9th, and the second recruitment is a part-time van driver over at the Council on Aging, and that one is posted until November 16th. The second thing on the agenda is transition. Just a couple of quick things on that. So next week will be my last week here. We'll likely have about a month gap between my departure and the arrival of the Human Resources Director, if all things go smoothly during that recruitment, and I expect they will. We have a good pool of applicants.
And I'm sorry, you said that closes when, just remind me?
November 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and while I have seen the applicants, I'm not involved in that recruitment. We typically do not have the person who's vacating a post involved in doing that recruitment, interviewing, and so forth, so we're following that practice. So there'll be about a month in between or so. We have met a number of times between Kate Levesque, our HR specialist, Bill, and myself, and going over, you know, how my duties would be covered as far as human resources, and we have those well covered, you know, during that interim period. One of the things that we've talked about on occasion, in fact, quite a bit over the last several years, is succession planning and having all of our managers and supervisors having a turnover binder prepared. And that's something that, you know, people in our office have done. Mine is up to date and it's ready to go. You know, and it's sitting on my desk, and there's an electronic and a hard copy, so that Bill can use that, Kate can use that, and then the new HR director can use the applicable portions of that. Now, you know, part of that binder is management and part of it's human resources, but there'll be parts that will be applicable. And then, of course, there'll be a discussion between the board and the new manager as far as what route you're gonna take. But anyways, the ground has been laid for that with that turnover binder, so that, you know, the work that we have been doing will continue to be done after I'm gone. It should be a seamless transition.
Great.
So that's all I have.
Great, thank you for making that as seamless as possible for, you know, not only Bill, but whoever comes into the role. And then, you know, ultimately, I think that'll affect the next town manager as well, just having that foundation set.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill has a similar binder with all of his, you know, duties laid out, what the office does, and so that his replacement will also have that sort of a, you know, a seamless sort of transition.
But I will say that Mike's binder is extraordinary. I mean, he's the one he set the example for everyone to follow, and it's actually a great binder. He did a really good job with it.
Do we want to skip around a little bit? Bill had asked if I wanted to be on that committee. You know, since we just talked about the jobs posted and closing out, I didn't want to assume it was going to be me. I wanted to open it to the board if anyone, you know, if that was something they were interested in or wanted to be part of. I didn't want to, you know, assume it was going to be me, so just wanted to offer that up if anyone in
For
particular.
the HR director.
The HR director position.
I think you'd be wonderful on that committee.
And I have to honestly say, I know somebody who may be applying, a very close friend.
Okay.
So I would have, even if you wanted to appoint somebody, I would have, you know, whether they get there, whether they get past, you know, the first steps,
Yep.
I don't know, but I would have just said no myself anyhow, you know, anyhow, just in case.
Seth and Dennis, you're good?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I would have been interested in because I really like human resources as a function, but doing the audit committee work, I think I'm doing that, and this is.
Okay, I wanted to have the discussion. I didn't want to, you know, make a decision without us
Right.
kind of talking as a board.
I think you have our blessing.
Okay, all right, great. So I will, you know, once that's kind of down selected, I won't sit in on like the phone interviews or stuff, but the final interviews, I'll take part in those with Bill and the team, so.
Yeah, we've already done some preliminary screening of certain candidates. I'll tell you, there's some good candidates, really good candidates.
All right, great. And then, you know, we're not going to let Mike's last Board of Selectmen meeting go without something. So we do have a citation that Doc's going to present.
Pull it out of it, wrap it up.
I got all dressed up for it.
His mask does match his outfit.
Very color
He came in with his
coordinated.
blazer on and he was very coordinated.
Had all week at home, recovering from COVID, to think about how am I going to color coordinate for my.
You knocked it out of the park.
So glad I could impress.
I'm happy and honored that Chairwoman allowed me to read this, having served with you for the last 7 years, and you've been here even longer. But believe it or not, this is an official citation from the Foxborough Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen commends Michael C. Johns for your 12 years of service to the town of Foxborough. Recognition is given to Michael Johns for your outstanding service to the town of Foxborough as veteran services in the town manager's office, where you gave of your skills and talents to the public in the town. We, the Board of Selectmen, would like to present this citation to you with our thanks. As the town's veteran service officer, for 8 years, you ensured that Foxborough veterans were supported through Chapter 115 benefits and VA resources, and gave them a voice in the community by forming the Veterans Services Advisory Committee. As the Assistant Town Manager and Human Resources Director for 4 years, you provided support to the town manager and department heads, as well as maintained and improved labor relations with all town unions, negotiating 6 union contracts in 1 calendar year. Your unending passion for the town you grew up in enriched the Foxborough community. The talents that you shared have improved services to veterans and town operations, as well as providing leadership and guidance to your colleagues and people of Foxborough. Our best wishes go with you, and know you'll bring the same skills, leadership, and knowledge to the town of Boxborough. We wish you very much health and happiness. This citation is given under the seal of the town of Foxborough this 25th day of October, 2022, and we all happily signed it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Should we, is this a photo op?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Should
What do
be.
you think? Up front with a picture?
Could be, you gotta take the mask off.
Stand in
Just
front
hold your
before you
breath.
take your mask
Just
off.
hold your breath for
Okay.
like 30
Yeah.
seconds.
I should have shaved too.
I know, that's okay, that's all right.
I love that.
She said I didn't sign it.
Good jacket.
Oh.
They look good. I like to be in the middle.
I was gonna say, somebody's got on the other, somebody's got to get on the
I
other.
thought this was great tonight too, and like that's the.
Here we go.
I don't want him to be,
I'm like, we were putting Mike all the way down the end, by himself. That's okay, I'm not a jerk. I'm good.
Yeah, right.
Very good.
Thank you. Congratulations. Well done. Well done.
He's like, let me get it back on.
I know. You are welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we did, but we're good. Don't you, oh, yeah, you can't, that's right, you said no.
Madam Chair, since this is Mike's last official meeting with the Board of Selectmen this evening, I just wanted to say, on behalf of the town staff and all the department heads and all the folks that have worked so closely with Mike over the past several years in both his capacities as a veteran service agent as well and as the assistant town manager and HR director, that his services will be dearly missed by all the folks that he's come to know. He truly is a Foxborough guy through and through, and really has given not only of his knowledge and skills, but of his passion for the community. And I think we've all felt that. I've learned a lot from him just because he's from this town, and he's also been a very he's been a good mentor for me in many ways. So we all learn off each other sometimes, and this was an opportunity where we both had that opportunity to do so. So I'm really grateful for all his service to us, and thankful for him, and want to wish him the very best, and just let him know that I'll always be at the other end of a call if he needs me for any help or guidance that, in doing the new job he's going to take on, which is a big responsibility. And it's not easy being the new guy in a situation where you're going to have a lot of challenges right out of the gate. So best of luck. I'm sure you'll do fine.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, members of the board. I really appreciate it. It's been my privilege and an honor to be able to serve in this capacity and in any of the capacities I've served for the wonderful people of Foxborough. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, so we're on to you, Bill.
All right, so just a few things. I had the privilege yesterday of meeting Attorney General Maura Healy yesterday afternoon. She was at SEMREC. She had never seen the facility and wanted to take a visit, and Senator Feeney was able to have her come to see it for the first time, and she was obviously very impressed. It was great to see her. Of course, we all know that she's a finalist for governor, and the way the polls are reading, looks like that's the direction that it could be headed. So best of luck to her. But it was great to meet her, and also to get have a good understanding of what we provide here on a regional basis and what SEMREC does for everybody. So it was a great opportunity to get together with her yesterday. There was one update that I wanted to provide too, was that in terms of use of town property, there will be holiday banners sponsored by the J.C.'s. Will go up with the help of DPW starting on November 21st and come down by the 7th of January. And
Which one's that?
it's the J.C.'s, the banners, the holiday banners in the center of town.
Okay.
Okay?
And the nativity.
The nativity, that's right. J.C.'s
Yeah, it's
do
the nativity, not banners, and right? And the,
No, they
and
do
the
the
lights.
banners. They think they do the banners too.
And the banners,
Yeah, the
okay.
banners too.
Okay.
The lights on the common, of course, are being done through Recreation this year and Human Services, so we're all, anxiously waiting to see how that's going to look, because it's going to be a real nice addition to the town for that period of time. So the financial summit is still planned for December 6th, which will be held here right before. Did we agree on that when we're going to have it right before?
Yeah,
the
I think
Selectmen's
as
meeting?
long as the Finance Committee, or sorry,
7:30.
as long as AdCom and School Committee didn't have any issues, we're
Right.
going to do it right before our meeting. We'll keep it a brief meeting just for like required action items after that.
Right.
But we'll keep that December 6th, so pencil that one in.
Yeah, so we just
Not
want
to
to make,
move.
just a reminder for everybody. And as I mentioned earlier, we're screening candidates as they come through now. There are a few folks, of course, we don't want to invite back, but there are some really good candidates for the HR director. So we're anxious to get that process wrapped up sooner rather than later, because obviously there'll be an absence. And it's interesting to note, too, that there are some really good candidates who just, unfortunately, were laid off because their business were moving into other locations. So they are available almost immediately, which is also good news. So it'll be good to see that. All right, that's all I have for now. What else?
Walnut?
Walnut Street?
Yeah, no, never mind.
On the formal announcement yeah, it's going to be tomorrow. We'll be
Okay,
in a formal
sorry.
announcement, so we are actually going to be receiving notification tomorrow. Paige will be going out to Pittsfield to meet with Lieutenant Governor to pick that up. So then we'll come back with a formal announcement and a formal press release on that. All right, but we did receive a significant grant, so everybody's pretty happy about that.
And do you have a plan for, which we can catch up with this after, like, but, you know, with the gap now of no assistant town manager, do you have a plan that you're going to roll out to us at some point with like second in command, you know, if,
Yes.
I mean, I know you're
yeah.
always available, but just if there's anything to communicate to us.
Yeah, there's going to be, I mean, I've planned any of my time off to be prior to Mike leaving for that reason. So I'm going to be here for the duration now until, most likely right up until sometime end of January, and then beyond that, given the transition piece.
Okay.
So, but I'll be here but there'll be days when I won't be able to be here, and I do have a couple folks that I'm in mind that I want to talk
Okay,
to.
to be able to like
Yeah,
sign something, whereas
exactly
Mike could
right.
do that before, so.
Exactly right. So,
Okay.
all right, that's all I have.
All right, great. And then I just have a couple of reminders. I'm not going to, talk too much about them, but we already talked about the financial summit. That saved the dates out there. That will be televised as well. There's a COVID booster and flu clinic this Friday. There's a link on the front page of the website to sign up ahead of time. So just be aware of that. That's coming. And then the Halloween parade is coming up October 29th, 2:30 to 4. Early voting is going on right now. And the state election is obviously November 8th. So just important reminders. And then we do have one action item.
Before I'm sorry, Madam Chair, one other thing under
Yep.
Selectmen's update, sort of last minute, but the NRC, the Neponset River.
Okay.
I am the representative there, even though there's been not a lot going on since the DEP closed, it being a hazardous site. Rich Lewis, the chairman of that committee, has sent a letter. Did he CC you guys?
I believe you did, yeah.
Yeah, I'll get you a copy, if not, back to the DEP to open that back up
Okay.
again. There's been some issues with the Neponset Reservoir, and it struck a concern with the citizens around that lake. I did reach out to Richard to ask if there's anything he needs from us at this point, and he said no, just a heads up that he's looking to get that reopened again.
Okay, all right, great.
And he sent a great letter to the DEP. If not, I'll forward it to you, Christina.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
to
taking
have
a look at it. Just-
And maybe to
yeah.
send it,
Yeah,
to
please.
the rest of the board. I'll do that tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Doc. And then just the other new business item, which is not part of action items, but Selectmen update, is Acholitos had sent a one-day beer and wine license for a couple dates. They did send it out before our agenda was finalized, and it didn't make it on there. So that's kind of why I allowed this one. I said, I know they're great, they follow the rules, but they've got to be in 30 days in advance. The Patriots games don't come out of nowhere. We got to be better about this. So this is kind of the last one that we're going to put on there. But she is looking for a license for 11/6. In the next meeting, you'll see ones on the agenda for the other dates that she applied for. So if there's no concerns, a motion for that one. I don't think it's very controversial, and I think that's one we can approve for a local business in town, if there's no concerns.
Motion to approve a one-day beer and wine license for Ashley's Taqueria for November 6th from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. And then I just forgot to mention the Sharps and Drug Take-Back Day, too, at Public Safety on the 29th.
Good. I have two quick things. Thoughts and prayers out to Michael Wellahan's family and the Foxborough Fire Department. Obviously, Mike spent his career there. Funny, he grew up right next door to my husband as kids. So, and believe it or not, before I even knew my husband, Mike and I worked at the End Zone together. He was a bartender and I was a waitress. So, thoughts and prayers to them. Obviously, it was a sudden passing, and at the wake, you could really just see the heavy hearts of the fire department. He was a well-liked guy, funny guy. So, thoughts and prayers out to everybody who loved Mike.
Take it way too young.
On a much lighter note, just to let you guys know, you might know about this, and Dennis might know about this. I spent the day up at the stadium yesterday. So if you're a season ticket holder and a Foxborough resident, they have this forum every 3 or 4 months, giving the residents a little bit of an update on what's going on up there. And so they invited us if you wanted to come up, and I love the Food Network, so I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. So they were taping, it was called Tailgate Throwdown, I think, or Tailgate Takedown. And so I happened to see Talk yesterday and told him about it. It was a lot of fun. So anyone who had gone up, we were basically extras. We just kind of stood in the back, and we were just, a man held up his hand, and that's when we were supposed to clap and cheer, and then he would do this, and everybody stopped. So it was two young women from, I believe they were from Needham, so they were representing the New England Patriots, and there were two gentlemen from Chicago, so, doing the Bears, and so I did stay for the first two tapings, and they didn't swear us to secrecy, but I'm not gonna it's gonna air in January. There's a whole succession. I think it's about Monday Night Football. I think they're taping 6 or 7 shows, so I'm not sure exactly, but it's supposed to start airing in January. So it was just kind of nice because it's our stadium right in the background, and the New England Patriots being represented. As the third round was going on, that's when it started to pour, and because I was going to the game, I'm like, it's time to go home, because I'm going to sit in the rain tonight. I'm not sitting in all day.
Rain you can sit out in.
But anyhow, it was, something interesting. It'll be fun to watch once it airs, and it was fun, and by the way, it was Vince Wilfork and Sonny Anderson from the Food Network. They were the ones hosting it, and I will tell you, Mr. Wilfork has thinned himself out. Like, he's
When
looking
he was there for the
sharp.
Hall of Fame, I thought, I had the same thought. He looked
Wow, yeah.
No.
And you know what? He kind of walked around. I got to take a selfie with him and Sonny. My sister went with me. And I said to him, I said, is this maybe your next profession? Working for the... He did a great job. And by the way, if anyone watches the Food Network, Sonny Anderson is a hoot, a howl. Like, we could hear her laughing before we even got to see her. My sister and I walking up, and she's like, I think that's Sonny. So anyhow, it was a very fun day, very interesting, and it'll be nice once it's aired. I'm not sure if we'll actually make the camera or not, but anyhow.
You were there.
We were cheering, so anyhow, it was fun.
All right, great. All right, so we've just got 3 or 4 quick action items. Anything else before we move on to those? Selectmen's update? No? Okay. Oh, let me just give some context on the first one, sorry. So this is the cell phone policy that's back. And although the Personnel Board had approved it, Bill hadn't weighed in on it, so we're kind of going backwards. It's coming back to us because the Personnel Board will meet again, but I think that's fine. So this now has just some additional feedback in it, and I'm good with this policy now as it is. It addresses the things that I had mentioned, so.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Motion to approve updated cellular phone policy dependent upon recommendation from Personnel Board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
Did this meet the requirements of the department heads? Like, did they review this? Are they comfortable with it? Does this cover what we needed to cover?
These are the things that we had raised as concerns previously, Seth.
Yeah, like it didn't address like eligibility. It said that people couldn't use their cell phones for personal business, even though they only had like the town manager and like the fire chief and the police chief. From what I read, it addressed all the concerns that I had.
Well, what about department heads?
Well, they'll still get the chance to read it and before, as part of the Personnel Board process too, so it's contingent upon their approval, so.
All right.
All right.
Good, thanks.
I think we want to just wrap that one up, before Mike left and have it buttoned up so that if everyone else just wants to look at it.
I wasn't aware there were any department head concerns with it.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard any.
I hadn't either, actually, so. But we're happy to review it with them. I'm gonna, I can do it tomorrow morning, actually, at my operations meeting.
The dollar amount you're talking about, right?
That?
I think that's what you,
That's part,
that's
yeah,
like
that
what
could.
come to mind for me, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dollar amount is actually pretty, we've done that, we haven't changed that in quite some time.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
Right, it's.
Yeah. But it's still, actually, if you look at it from the perspective, Seth, of if you're given the option of getting a phone or the reason why you would get the stipend is because it's assumed you would not use your phone the entire time on town business. That's the issue. And that's why people do get the stipend in those instances, because they don't have to use it all the time. So these are people, the ones that the department heads and the people that get the phones are the ones that consistently use it and they're on 24/7 call as a result.
So if somebody gets a stipend and the phone needs to be replaced, that's at the owner's
That's exactly right.
cost, right? That wasn't, I don't think that's in the policy, but.
No, but the stipend doesn't, it covers all the costs associated with the period.
And then there's a different, like, technology use one that kind of would tie in. I think from what I reviewed it a while ago, that would cover things like that.
So it still says that, it basically says that employees who are issued a cell phone still need to carry 2 cell phones, basically, right?
You can, yeah, you
Well-
can. If you're gonna have, if you have a situation where you are a person who doesn't want to, who wants to continue to use, who's not on 24/7 basis, but still wants to have a town phone, you would have to carry 2. But if you're 24/7, you're not required to, because you could still use it for both.
If you're 24/7, so you're issued a phone. Basically what this says is if you're issued a phone, you're not supposed to use it for personal use.
Oh, no, I didn't read it that way. There are exemptions in there, if you read the
There's
exceptions.
certain
there are
positions that are
exceptions.
24/7 that are exempt from that.
There are several exceptions.
Well, it says
It lists the positions,
not issued for the, okay.
the list of various positions. Okay.
It says not issued for the purpose of replacing a person's individual cellular phone.
Right, but there are exceptions to that rule, the next paragraph.
But I know, like, my company issues me a phone, I choose to carry 2. Like, I think that would always
You
be, yeah, I do. I carry 2
Person has
cell
that
phones.
choice.
And a lot of people, like, people in my work, you can pick, do you want the BYOD, bring your own device, or to carry 2.
Yeah. So if let's say I was issued a phone because I was quote unquote 24/7, I wouldn't want to carry 2 cell phones, and they don't, right? Because it's just not convenient.
It's not.
But it might be personal preference, because there's public records.
let's say it's
So
not- let's
since
say-
they're municipal employees, like, the phone bill becomes municipal record and everything, so that's why someone may choose to carry 2.
Right, but
as well.
if you rather use one phone, can you or can you not?
You can't,
I read it that you could.
only the ones that have the exemption can do that.
Okay. And where is, so that's this list of,
Those individuals.
okay.
Right.
Fair enough, thanks.
Yeah, sure.
And it still will have to go to Personnel Board and, that review as well. If they have any changes, I'm sure it'll come back to us
Right.
again. But at least this one, if they're good with it, is okay to move forward.
Do we take the vote?
No, we need to take the vote. That was under discussion.
Right.
So all those in favor?
Aye. Squadron 21ers. Ready
Yep.
for- Okay, motion to approve a one-day beer and wine license for November 5th for Squadron 21ers.
Second.
And under further discussion, I think it's just a good reminder for Katie to give them, they're really successful, but they get 30 of these in a year, because I know that their model is using them. And then just, in fairness, we should really remind them of the 30 days too, so. Yeah, okay, so, they really should get them in. I know things come up in charity things.
So do we know what this one is for specifically? Like, is it a charity event or?
It says it right in the application, right?
I'd have to look at it.
And I know they've had them before, obviously. I would just, maybe even just a reminder, because I'm not really sure what this means, where it's like, so they're using quality beverage, but I have cabinets behind the bar and in the wholesaler van, so I would just make sure that they remember that the beer's in that day and out. Beer and wine are in
Yeah.
that day and out.
But they don't have to have it for a charity thing, like, they could just do a one day if they wanted to as well.
I was
so.
just curious, I mean, I know it says like there's no dancing or anything, or music or anything like that. Just curious if, what's the reason to have it? That's all. And I'm sure we've given to them before. I don't need, that's not a deal breaker for me to, to vote and approve it. I would just say, just make sure, because usually a lot of times they're before us, just to maybe the Katie will just remind them that the beer, the alcohol's in and out same day.
Yeah, good reminders.
Yeah.
And it is helpful if we just know, is it just, do they have a tournament that night? Is it a charity thing? Just let Katie know that.
Yeah, I mean, they're repeat,
Yeah.
I don't really see a problem, but I think just nice for us to know what, where it is, a one-day license, what's it being used for.
All right, and then we just have the 2 minutes. Or do we, no, we need to take a vote, sorry.
Yep.
So all those in favor of the one day for Squadron 21ers?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now the 2 minutes.
All set? Motion to approve the September 27th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the October 11th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
And motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.